Visiting Disneyland Paris as a former Walt Disney World Photopass photographer, one of the things I was really fascinated with was the differences and similarities in how Photopass at Disney Paris worked compared to what Walt Disney World or even Disneyland does. Of course, I found a whole lot of similarities, but I did also find some definite ways that it was a little bit different in Paris. If you're not familiar with Photopass, Photopass is a way that Disney parks in particular use to allow a guest to take pictures with the park photographers, and then they will give them a card, or in the case of Walt Disney World, you'll even use a magic band or something like that, and that will keep track of all of the pictures you've had taken at all of the parks throughout your whole entire vacation. It's a great way for you to be able to, say, take a whole ton of pictures and not have to worry about juggling a whole ton of different slips and how do you get the pictures and when do you get them. You can wait till the end of your trip and pick up all your pictures at one time. It also allows you to prepay for your pictures and pay a little bit less money to be able to get everything that you then have taken. So in that regard, Photopass at all of the Disney parks is pretty similar. You see a photographer, you go get your picture taken, you have them scan your card or your wristband, you're good to go. Then you can check your pictures either on the app that they use later on, or you can see them in the park, or you can wait till you get home and see them online. Works all three ways and makes it very easy to keep track of your pictures. However, I did find at Paris that there were some ways that it was very similar and some ways it was very different. One of the big differences I found at Disneyland Paris with their Photopass photographers was just simply on the number of photographers. At Walt Disney World and Disneyland, there's a lot of photographers around. At Disneyland Paris, there weren't quite so many. You basically had 6 ride locations that you could add onto your Photopass. So Tower of Terror, Rock and Roller Coaster, Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, and a couple of others were there as well. But then as far as actual photographers in the park, but outside of the rides, there were only a few guaranteed locations that you would have a photographer. If you went to the Princess Fair where you got to meet a princess, there'd be a photographer there. There was one with Mickey. There were a couple other characters that definitely had one, like Spider-Man was one of the ones that was advertised having one. But many of the characters, it was hit or miss. I didn't see any other photographers around at the parks. So if you want a Photopass picture with, say, Sleeping Beauty's castle, well, there weren't any photographers out there to be able to get one for you. Now, that may be partially because of the time of year I was there, but if you looked on the Photopass website or on the park app, it actually only listed 11 locations where there were going to be photographers. Now, I did pleasantly find out in the parks that there were a few locations that were not on the app that they did have Photopass photographers. So when I got to go see Mr. Incredible, for example, or if you're going to go see Vaiana, or a couple of other characters, there would be Photopass photographers there, and they weren't necessarily advertised on the app or on the website. So you got to find a few extras. But there weren't a whole lot of photographers around, especially if you want something that wasn't on ride or a character, there just weren't any. Now that may very well change if it's a busy time of year, say on a holiday weekend or maybe during the summer when there's a lot more tourists. After all, I was there in March, and it was pretty quiet most of the time. And I think that's why staffing levels in a lot of areas were down, was just because of the time of year and a variety of other things similar to that. But if you were looking for a lot of locations, there wasn't a whole lot of them. That may have been the biggest noticeable difference, but there were a few others. One, for example, the way the photographers dressed. They actually had long sleeve, almost kind of a sweater polo without a collar on. It was a much more casual look than what you would see at the parks of the United States. In the US, we had collared shirts and an outfit that just really kind of stood out, and you would look at them and go, oh, hey, look, it's a photographer. It would be easy to spot. With what the Photopass photographers in Paris wore, it would be easy for them to blend into the crowd and not necessarily be seen if that's what they wanted to do. Of course, I was looking for them, so it was easy for me to spot them when they were there. And that was in addition to, apparently, some of the slightly different and relaxed dress codes that Disneyland Paris had compared to the States. There's nothing wrong with that. This is called adapting to the culture. I know there's some people in the States that kind of go, oh, it would never happen! Disney will flex with the culture and where they are at. And I'm pretty sure that's what they're doing here with the photographers. But it is definitely a little bit of a different look than you would ever see from a photographer in the US. One of the things I found absolutely fascinating, though, was the gear that their photographers used. When I left Photopass at Walt Disney World, they were just really starting to get into the shoulder harnesses and body straps and things that were much more stable. Well, at Disneyland Paris, they didn't just have some basic straps. It was a heavy-duty harness. I'm looking at these pads on the back going, wow, that actually looks like it'd be pretty comfortable. But it's a good thing that they had all that, because the cameras they used, they weren't using just a basic medium-range to upper-range Nikon camera to take pictures. They were using the heavy-duty, full-bore Nikon, I think they were D3s or D4s. These are big cameras. These are professional-grade cameras. The camera bodies alone can cost a couple $1,000s. I mean, expensive gear. To give you an idea, just as a simple way to describe the difference, the cameras that we used at Disney had one shutter button. One button that you push to take the picture. These are the models that are designed that if you turn the camera sideways, there is another shutter button on the bottom of the camera, so you're not having to reach around the camera. That's just a minor little thing. There's actually a lot of ways that these are much, much higher quality cameras. These are things that people that do photography for a living, professionally doing expensive photos, it's that kind of a camera that they use. Big time gear. It was fascinating to watch that and just kind of sit there and think, wow, that would have been really cool to use a camera that nice when I was shooting. Definitely a huge upgrade over what the cameras in the States have. Another interesting way was the way that the costs differed. Now, we bought annual passes that were there. If you go to Disneyland Paris and you're going to be there for 4 days or more, look at the pricing on the annual pass. It's probably going to be cheaper for you than if you were to buy, say, a 4-day ticket or a 5-day ticket. So while we're there 4 days, because we have annual passes, we actually had a discount available to us on the purchase of what's called Photopass Plus. And this is basically the program that you prepay and then get all of your pictures for a certain length of time. In the case of an annual pass, it's actually for a year. So hey, if I manage to get back to Disneyland Paris the next year, I actually get all my new pictures free. Of course, I got to get there, and that's going to be interesting. But it is a way that you can pay ahead of time. As an annual pass, you get a discount on that. And the price that we paid was 55 euros for 1 year's worth of pictures. To translate that into American money, it's about $1.25, the current exchange rate for a euro. And so you were looking about $70 or so to be able to pay for all your pictures for the year. At Walt Disney World, that same kind of pass is $169. At least if you don't have an annual pass. There may be a discount for pass holders. So a big price difference in there. Out at Disneyland, I know they have some other different price points, and so it may be more comparable to Disneyland and California's prices. $70, all your pictures, and your first thought is, wow, that's pretty cool. So how does that translate into actually being used? Well, we were actually at the parks for 6 days, more or less, and then a couple evenings as well. During that time, with all of our on-ride photos, with all of our character photos, and actually the one young lady in our party got to go over to their version of the Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique, and she got a big makeover. With all of those photos, we ended up with a grand total of 70 pictures. To compare that again to Walt Disney World, which has a lot more photographers and opportunities, in 4 days I came close to 350 pictures. So a big difference in the number of pictures, but it also comes from a big difference in the number of photographers, and it shows up in the price you pay. Is it worth it? Well, that's kind of up to you. If you're not going to be meeting characters at Disneyland Paris, or if you're not going to be going to get a makeover, it's probably not worth it, because all you're really looking at then is just on-ride photos. And with only 6 rides, that's not necessarily going to be a whole lot of pictures. All we were doing was that, I probably would not have bought the Photopass. Knowing that we were going to be meeting characters though, I figured we were probably going to at least break out even. I hope to come out with about 50 to 60 pictures. The nice thing is, with the Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique, it came out to about $1 a picture. Now, if we hadn't done all the characters and stuff, and I was paying a Photopass Plus at regular price, which I think was 70 euros, and didn't meet characters, it definitely would not be worth it there. But if you've got an annual pass, or you're going to be back to the park a bunch of times, or you're there for several days, you're definitely going to be meeting characters, then it's definitely something to think about, because it could pay for itself. And part of that, too, with the characters is it depends upon the time of year that you're there and how long the lines are. Spider-Man, my friends got to catch him at one point with a 15-minute line, but personally, I never saw it at lower than 60 minutes. Mickey constantly had a line of about an hour. Same thing with the princesses, and these were on slow days. Now, I did manage to catch a few characters that were, say, out at the front of the park or in a couple other locations where the lines were short, and we got to go through that pretty quick. But as far as the established regular meeting locations, they can have some pretty long lines. So there were things that if you want to meet them, you want to get there early, so that way you can make sure you can get your pictures and then go on and do other things. Otherwise, again, it's a time versus cost factor, and the Photopass can definitely play into that. One other thing, though, that I did find really neat with Disneyland Paris was the app that they had. They actually have a completely separate app for the Photopass pictures to Disneyland Paris. And if you have internet connection, which was iffy for me because of being international, you can actually open up the app, and then when you walk up to look at your ride photos, they will actually show them on the screen, and then they will have a scan box on that same screen image. And so you could make note of the number on your picture, and you can go to the counter and tell the people there and have them added onto your Photopass, which is what we did most of the time. But if you've got an internet connection, you could also open up the app on your phone, walk up to the screen, scan the box, and it would automatically then add the picture onto your Photopass card through the app. And then you've got it, and you could immediately look at your pictures on the app. That was pretty cool. That's something that Walt Disney World doesn't do. So that's a great way to use the app as well. It was just a lot of fun, though, to be able to look at the Photopass at Disneyland Paris and see the ways that it was similar and the ways it was different. I didn't see the photographers quite as active necessarily as what I was at Walt Disney World, but I was kind of an active photographer the way I moved around. But they were very professional, looked like they were doing a great job, and the photos that we got were really good photos. I was very pleased with the quality that we got. They were also very flexible. If you had your own camera and didn't want Photopass, they or the attendants were very happily using guest cameras and getting good pictures with them as well. As you can see with my pictures here with Tweedledum, Tweedledee, and the White Rabbit. I got some great photos, and that was just the attendant taking the pictures with my camera. So they were very happy to flex with you and work with you that way. Generally, I would have liked to have seen a lot more photographers. I would have liked to have been able to get some pictures out on Main Street as you're going into the park, and in front of the castle, and in front of Tower of Terror, and to be able to get some of those kinds of photos that just weren't available. And I do hope that they were available during the busier times of the year, and maybe it was just because when we were there. I would like to have seen more photographers, and I would have happily paid a little bit more for the Photopass if they'd had more photographers and opportunities to get more pictures. It was surprising the number of characters that did not have Photopass photographers. As an example, when I ran into Minnie in Adventureland, no photographer. Most of the time with the characters up at the front of the parks when you first walk in, a lot of times they didn't have photographers, like Mary Poppins and Bert didn't. When I saw Stitch or Donald Duck, they didn't have a photographer, and it was a pretty prominent meet and greet location. So I would have liked to see more photographers. I'd like to see them grow the program. I also got the impression the whole time that with Disneyland Paris, that their staffing levels were also much lower, especially for off-season, than say you would see at a park in the U.S. And there's probably various reasons for that. Maybe because of schooling and college and other jobs, and as well as the fact that the parks are slower. I don't know, and I'm not going to pretend to know on those. But it's something that hopefully they can work on and improve in the future. So there's a little look at Photopass at Disneyland Paris, and some of the ways it's similar and some of the ways it's different. Hope you enjoyed this kind of brief look at it. It's something that, again, if you're going to be there for several days to meet characters, it's worth it. But if you're not going to see characters, probably not. Thanks so much for watching. I'd love to hear your thoughts on Photopass at Disneyland Paris if you've used it before, especially if you've been back and forth and compare it between the states. Thank you so much, too, to all my patrons for supporting me. Appreciate it. If you want to know more about Patreon and supporting me, as well as my Facebook page, Discord, buying shirts, and other merchandise and things like that, please don't forget to check the links in the description below. Thank you so much for watching, and God bless. They actually only had 6... Is that right? So that kind of gives you... And that would put us about $1 a picture. And so that would be... Is that... So Photopass at Disneyland... Visiting... Talk... If you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button right there. If you'd like to see another great video of mine, there's a good one right there for you. And if you'd like to be like these wonderful people and support me on Patreon, hit that link right there. Thanks so much.